My dear brothers and sisters, it's very difficult to ignore the story of Job that we've heard in the first reading. The story that we started hearing from this week on Monday, with all the devastation and the hardship that has befallen Job. And I say it's very difficult to ignore it, because I think it's the story of our own lives and the struggles that we go through every day. And when I was reflecting on this, I was thinking about skin disease that Job was going through. The difficulty of having a skin disease. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I experienced that when I had chicken pox. I never forget that experience, because it's the most discomforting experience you could ever have. Your whole body is itching, and you just have two hands to try to scratch your body. And it's so uncomfortable. And I try to imagine Job, not only that he's lost everything, he's lost his family, he's lost his children, he's lost his house, he's lost his household, everything. His servants are all gone. He's left by himself. Everybody has left him. And now he is struck by a disease, a very strange disease, a skin disease, at the moments that he needed people around him. He needed people to help him to do one or two things, but he's all by himself. And the story of Job is a story where people question and try to see, what does it mean, divine justice? What does divine justice mean? Because at these moments, Job is trying to question God and saying, I don't know anything that I've done wrong. I have tried to be faithful to you from the very beginning of my life. And how comes all these things has befallen me? How comes I'm suffering so much when I'm so faithful to you? And now we have other 3 friends of Job who have come, and they try to redefine this for him. And they tell him, there is something definitely that you've done, that you're suffering for your own sins. You're suffering because of what you've done. And at some point, even one of his wives comes and he says that it's better that you curse God and die than to suffer like this. And you see, Job is not getting any support at all, not even from God, because at this moment, God has not spoken to him. At this moment, he's still questioning and praying, and God is not answering. God seems to be quiet in all of this. And I think, my dear brothers and sisters, we go through such experiences where we just feel so much pressure, that we feel so much the silence of God not speaking. We don't get any support from anywhere. And like I said last time, I think Job at some point contemplated like it was better he had died than to live. But you see, in the midst of all this, in the midst of the quiet of God's silence, in the midst of all the discouragements that Job is getting, he says, in spite of all this, I believe that my Vindicator lives, that my Redeemer is still alive. My Vindicator is still alive. My Vindicator lives. My Redeemer lives. And I think it takes a lot of faith to be able to do that, in spite of the opposition that you receive. I mean, you have these 3 friends around you, and they are telling you how wrong you are, how this is happening because of the wrong things that you've done in your life, and how you can never get out of that, how you are doomed. And there is really nothing that can support Job at this moment. And my dear brothers and sisters, like I said, there are moments that we feel just like Job when we encounter some of those things. Is it because we are getting punished by God? And the big answer is no, because Job was a righteous man. He lived the most holy life that you can ever hear of. And this is what we hear in the book of Job, chapter 1, when he says, when God said, this is one of my, he's very righteous, Job is very righteous, and yet all these things come to him. And at the beginning of this book, I was saying that this book is not really something that happened. It is a didactic book. It is a book that is meant to teach us. One of the things, I think the lessons we could get, especially from this passage that we read today, is that God's justice is not like when we do something wrong, or that if something bad is happening to us, it is because of the wrongs that we did in the past. I've often heard people say that, I think I'm suffering because of something that happens to me. Maybe God is punishing me for my deeds. Maybe God is doing this. Like Job says, the hand of God has struck me down. At some point we feel like that, like God is punishing us. Whatever thing we are going through, the misfortune that we experience in life, is not because of something else apart from the fact that we have done something wrong and God is punishing us for our wrong deeds. And I think this is a very wrong impression, because God does not punish us according to our deeds. The Word of God says that He tempers justice with mercy. It is not in God's mercy, it's not in God's nature to punish us for the deeds that we have done. In fact, He wants to look on us with mercy and grant us forgiveness, and as far as possible liberate us from this suffering. But the only reason for which Job is suffering is because he is righteous. It's because the devil found him righteous, and that is why he is suffering. At times also, when we go through difficulties and hard times, it is not because we've done something wrong. It is because Jesus would want us to share in His own suffering. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12 to 13. Rejoice to the extent that you share in the sufferings of Christ. And that is when we can make our suffering redemptive, that we say, okay, I'm not suffering just because God has punished me, but I want to unite my suffering with the sufferings of Christ. God has found me worthy to be one of those who would share in His own cross, in His own suffering. And in that way, we will rejoice even when we suffer, that we have been given the privilege, just like the apostles rejoiced in the book of Acts when they were persecuted, and they said, we have such privilege to suffer, to share in the sufferings of Christ. My dear brothers and sisters, let us continue to ask, especially as we go through these readings of Job, that God will grant us the grace to be able to persevere during difficult moments.